You spend your money, you buy your ticket, you get on the bus, and then the driver puts you in the overhead luggage compartment. I wouldn't be happy, you wouldn't be happy, and the ghost wasn't happy either.
Arriving at Retrospect. Retrospect Station. Doors will open on the left.
Welcome back, passengers, to Retrospect Station, the show where I show you just how colorful life can be. I'm your host, Elizabeth Dean, and ding, 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 it is season 2 of Retrospect Station, a whole week late, basically, because I made promises I couldn't keep. I wanted to give the Science Center episode a little bit of room to breathe. I'm still putting up shorts on the internet for it to kind of reel people in. And so, season 2 starts in a brand new room that I'm not making a habit of using because this is a giant, giant room. And I do not need to be in this room, but I'm here in this room because circumstances have led me to be in this room because the life do be lifing right now. For people wondering on video looking at it, I am in the sound studio at the Mississauga Library Makerspace instead of a normal sound booth. This is a room full of instruments. I don't think I've ever been in a sound room with this many instruments before. It's very scary and I love it very much. But this is kind of unnecessarily large for the purposes of a podcast. So I can also hear all of the echoes in this room. And it took me at least 5 minutes to figure out how the hell to work this particular soundboard, which is a little bit scarier than the other ones I'm used to. So yeah, okay, that's enough about me rambling. Season 2, we're here. Update. I still have my weird wrist brace. I still have de Quervain's tenosynovitis. I'll get into that one day. But for now, I wanted to open with a medium-ish kind of story. And I wanted to open with a low-stakes story. I mean, the last story that we went through last time, the Ontario Science Centre story was, the lesson we learned from that is that, for lack of better words, oftentimes conservative right-wing style governments cannot be trusted to protect academic institutions because most of them are leaning extraordinarily far right. And instead, all they keep doing is destroying our academic institutions, and Doug Ford can't be trusted. That's really the lesson to have taken away from last episode. Please stop trusting Doug Ford. I swear to God, I can't handle this. Stop. This was, I wanted to bring it back to Ottawa a little bit. I've got most of the season planned out, and I think a lot of the stories are going to bring me back to Ottawa. I tried to remain a little more in Mississauga in season 1, and when I first started this podcast, particularly, it was because my friend Noah said to me, and my ex Noah said to me, you have a lot of stories about Ottawa. And so I started up thinking I was going to tell all those stories about Ottawa, and well, whoop-de-doo, here I go. I'm going to tell you stories that involve Ottawa a lot more than I used to. So the guest, in quotations, the guest in overhead luggage, I think is what I called this episode. And, okay, I put it in quotes because if someone's a guest in your home, in your car, in your personal space, in a shared communal space, typically your guest is alive. Infrequently, your guests may be dead. And such was the case. Yeah, but this one's a spooky one. For that person who doesn't like jump scares and spooky things, you won't love this one. Okay, so what year was this? This would have been okay, I want to say this would have been the year 2016 through to 2017. It could have already been 2017, but I have a feeling it was 2016. I believe it was summer, either coming up on winter, or if it was 2017, it was somewhere leaving winter. But I think it might have been November 2016-ish. So now today, in the year of our Lord's 2025, there is no Greyhound in Canada anymore. Greyhound withdrew business from Canada, I think in 2020 or something, or 2021. The pandemic was their excuse for withdrawing service, but I think they just weren't seeing the kind of profit margins that their shareholders wanted to see. So we don't have Greyhound buses in Canada anymore, but we did for a very, very long time. And back when we did have Greyhound in Canada, there used to be a terminal in Toronto. The terminal was at the corner of Bay Street and Front Street. Dundas. I don't know what street it was. I don't know Toronto streets very well. Near Eaton Centre, whatever that intersection is. So at Bay Street and it was nearby St. George University of Toronto campus as well. So that area. If you hear a knocking, I don't know what's going on. There's ghosts in the ceiling. There's ghosts in my bus and there's ghosts in the ceiling. But when so there was a station in Toronto and then there was a station in Ottawa at, oh God, I don't even remember what street it was at anymore. St. Catherine Street. Catherine Drive? Catherine Street. Wait, no, I do remember. Catherine and Kent. That was the intersection. Look how many years I still remember it later. It used to be there. I have no idea what's there now. I genuinely don't. I have not been to that spot in a long time. So, but we used to have a station there. And so the buses would go, like there was a whole Greyhound network in Southern Ontario. And there's just a set of charter buses. For people who've never heard of Greyhound, where are you? What rock do you live under? But we had Greyhound buses for a time. And what I used to do in my second year, my second year of university is I won't get into too many specifics right now, but I used to have an appointment with a dermatologist, a clinic in Toronto once a month. And I mean, I had gone to that clinic all my life that I could remember that clinic being there. And so I had no reason to just stop because I was going to Ottawa. So I kept on going to that clinic, even when I went away to university. And I'd come back once a month for my appointments. And I take the train sometimes. But if the train was too expensive, I would take the Greyhound, especially if it was like an overnight thing, me just like quickly running away and coming back, and it wasn't like reading week or something, I would take the Greyhound. And I used to take the Greyhound in the middle of the night. Basically, I would take the bus that left at like 12:34 at night, and it would arrive at like 6 in the morning, 5:54 in the morning, I think was the time. And then my parents would come pick me up and bring me home. And that worked out because people had work. I had school. So like the easiest way for me to leave Ottawa at a time that didn't interfere with my studies and go home was like in the middle of the night. And there were some buses that were like 10 o'clock or whatever, but they came in at 4 or something like that. Like they basically came in not an hour before when the midnight bus came in. So I was like, well, here, the midnight bus is cheaper. It's going to come in basically around the same time. Arguably, it'll come in at a better time. I don't want to be arriving in Toronto at 4 in the morning. Do you want to be coming to pick me up, waking up at the like 3:30 in the morning to come get me? I don't think so, because you have work tomorrow, parents. So we all agreed on midnight. I was not a child who was ever afraid of the late night. Once I went away to Ottawa, I was absolutely not afraid. And this showed in the way that I behaved and did things, including taking the midnight buses from Ottawa to Toronto. And I would do the same going back. I would also take midnight buses going to Ottawa going back. Not as frequently, but it happened. Or I would take the bus at midnight from Toronto and arrive in Ottawa at the crack of dawn, basically. which I really loved doing because I loved seeing the city wake up. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, you're here for the guest in the overhead luggage story. So on one of these trips, as I have them regularly now, I boarded the bus and my seat where I was, the way they seat you in some charters is by ticket number or by like whatever. So I think this particular one was seating us by ticket number, or maybe I just was late-ish to the party. But I think I may have been the second to last person to board this bus. And that meant I was sitting right up at the front, right behind the driver. Like there was the driver's seat, 2 seats behind the driver, and then there was my 2 seats. And I didn't have anybody sit next to me, apparently. Like the whole trip, I wasn't going to have anybody sit next to me. Which I like usually because I can just kind of put my bag next to me and sit around. And these charter buses are, for people who have not been on charter buses, but maybe have been on airplanes, there is an overhead luggage compartment right above the seat. So you can kind of rest your bag at your seat, at your feet, or you can put it up above your head. Note, up above your head, where the luggage compartment is, it's not like how on a train or maybe on a plane. I've never been on a plane, so I wouldn't know how it's a separate compartment for each pair of seats. It was like just an overhead luggage chasm. And the only thing preventing the luggage from falling onto passengers were 2 strings, like 2 elasticy type thick string things, to prevent things from falling forward. So otherwise it was open, like your things could slide at least like 2-3 seats back or something like that. Okay, so now we get to the guest. As I said, you buy your ticket, you spend your money, you buy your ticket, you board the bus, and then the driver puts you in overhead luggage. You wouldn't be happy. Well, I learned that night, that fateful night, that Greyhound buses aren't usually in the business of transporting anything else except for people and their stuff. But occasionally, when push comes to shove, I suppose, they'd happily transport organs. So they say the eyes are the window to the soul, and that night we were transporting somebody's eyes. I was going to start with that. So I get on this bus. The 2 front seats in front of me are empty, but not really, because in one of them, there seems to be like a little plastic basin type, shallow type thing. And it's there, and it's got a seat belt. Like the front seats have seat belts in the Greyhound. And so the driver seems to be doing something outside the bus with somebody. They're concerned with something else. Now the whole bus has been boarded. And right before we load off of the platform and drive away into the night, the driver comes on board with somebody else who puts something in the plastic thing in front, in the seat in front of me. And then they go down the stairs and they continue to talk about something with the driver. And curiosity got the better of me because I was only 18 years old. And I stood up and kind of like leaned over to see what this thing was. And it was nothing but a canister, maybe the size of a cookie tin. But it was white. And it's a canister, like a tall cylinder canister, not like the flat things that people put their sewing equipment in. I don't know, like a canister maybe 5-6 inches tall and like 4 inches across, maybe. Not a really big canister, but it was white. It had a whole heap of text and labels around it. And at first I thought it was like a hazardous material kind of thing. I didn't really know what else it was. But yeah, like I thought it was like a hazardous material of some sort. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, nothing to it. Like they're transporting some sort of material. I felt a little like remiss about it. I'm like, why do I have to have the seat in front of behind the weird chemicals? I don't want to get injured. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But then I noticed that they had ice packs. It wasn't just a singular cylinder. It was like a cylinder that had like a little something attached to the side of it or whatever. And upon further inspection, it looked like an ice pack. lo and behold, it was a little bit of an ice pack. And so the driver comes on, looks at this bin thing, kind of sets it a certain way into the seat. Or maybe there wasn't a bin. No, was there a bin? It was a kind of a bin, but it was like, it was shallow, like this. You'll get why I'm mentioning that. So the driver, she kind of sets it in the bin, then pulls the seatbelt over this bin and locks in this bin. Then tries her best to take either her bag or something of her effects from her, like from overhead luggage, and puts it to like sort of attempt to secure this canister from falling over. So I'm like, okay, whatever it is, like she's securing it. Cool. And we sit in the bus, we drive off. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of nice, whatever, we're going about. Huh. And then we come up to a point where the bus has to make a pretty sharp stop. I mean, this could be like at least 20 minutes into my trip. And the canister falls forward in the bin. Like she had positioned it back into the bin towards the back of the seat. And it goes, vodum, and it hits the front of the bin. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And then she drives off and it hits the back of the bin. Ta-dong! And so what is it? Apparently ended up happening is that this canister has rolled onto its side. And maybe I think I'm misremembering the ice pack thing. I think it was just the canister. But because it was able to roll, this canister was somehow able to roll. And so I remember this is a long time ago. I've managed to block out parts of this memory. It was a little bit weird. So the canister rolls forward in the bin and backward in the bin. It keeps doing this rattling thing every time we stop completely and then pull off with speed. Anytime it was a gentle stop, the ghosts in the ceiling are angry at me telling the story again. Anytime it was a gentle stop, it wouldn't do that. And then we pulled off gently, it wouldn't do that. But every time it was a sharp stop, which was a few times, especially if you're picking up passengers, and this thing is falling forward into the bin. At some point in the night, I think the bin just tossed the eyeballs out. And again, I didn't know they were eyeballs. Just a random canister. But at some point, the bin just kind of went thunk on one of the stops. And I guess it shifted upwards in the seatbelt because it's a slippery seat and it's a slippery bin. And because it's like a fake leatherette seat. And when the driver pulled off, the canister stayed in the bin, but when the driver did their next sudden stop, the canister just flew forward into the plexiglass thing in front, like behind the driver, and then hit the floor. And so the driver, like at that stop, got up, walked around, picked up the canister, settled the bin, and put the canister back in the bin, and then sat down again. And I was like, okay, cool. So on we drive. And this happens a couple more times where the bin mispositions itself. Because now we're really driving. There's stops. There's this. We're like going station to station. Because the Toronto route went from Toronto to Scarborough to Ajax, Oshawa. Like there's a lot of consecutive stops all in a row before we hit this really long stretch of Trans-Canada Highway. So in that set of stretches, the bin fell out. The canister fell out of the bin multiple times. And so the driver, I think at one point got really sick of the bin doing this. So the driver kind of like reattached the seat belt, tried to redo the bin situation. And I believe eventually just stopped putting it in the bin and instead sat it on the seat, like upright, and then buckled it in with the lap belt. And for a time, I thought that was working. And then every time the bus happened to like slow down progressively, this canister would just fly out of the seatbelt. It wasn't often once we hit the long stretch of highway after Peterborough. Peterborough or Pickering? Pickering. What am I talking about? After we hit the I always get those confused. After we hit the long stretch for a while after Pickering to get to Peterborough, it only happened once where the canister just kind of flew out of the seatbelt. And as soon as the driver was at a stoplight, not even at the stop in Peterborough where we had to pick up the next passengers, we were at a stoplight off the highway waiting. The driver got up, like, put the bus in park. There we go. And got up and picked up this canister off a seat and put it back in the seatbelt. And then went back and sat in the car, the driver's seat, and then drove again. And I'm like, I don't understand why this driver is managing this canister in this manner. Why is she dealing with it in this way? I don't understand this. This is really uncanny. So we stop at Peterborough. Peterborough is a longish stop because there's people who want to offload baggage, and there was people who wanted to unload baggage, and there was it's a bit more of a transitional spot a lot of the time when traveling on Greyhound. And so I took that opportunity out of, again, curiosity, and also I think I wanted something from the overhead luggage compartment where I'd put my bag. So I reach up into the did I put it up there? I don't recall if I put it up there. Maybe I didn't. I think I wanted to pull my bag back down. I think it might have been what it was. Because I remember standing up. So I think I was pulling my bag out of the overhead luggage and I just left it on my lap, like, with me. I remember why. It's because I wanted to start taking a nap on the longer bus ride and I wanted to hold my bag. I don't like leaving it unattended like that. So I pulled it out. I sat down with it. But as I'm stood up and I'm looking at this canister, because now I can get a better look at it, it's not kind of weirdly in a bin. I look at the label and the label actually says biohazard, I only catch these words: biohazard, organic material, transplant, donor was the word I caught. There was a name on the canister, which I don't remember. And then I saw the label, something was like item eyes. And by this point, you can see a little bit of condensation on the outside of the container. So the container itself has its own cooling whatever inside of it to keep the eyes cold. And it's causing condensation to form on the outside of the container because the container itself is cool. And I'm like, hold on, stop the bus. Again, we're transporting eyes in the middle of the goddamn night. What are you talking about? So whereas before I was unsettled thinking it was a dangerous chemical because I saw a Wimmis label on it, now I'm just freaked out because we're transporting somebody's eyes. And as I pointed out before, the eyes are the window to the soul. And I think that bus driver, well, I'll get to it. So I did think about that, this is a person's body parts. They're probably dead. So it's 1 a.m. and we have a dead person's eyes in the front seat of this bus. I'm freaked out. I don't know if I can sleep anymore. So I just kind of sat there holding my bag going okay. And also I understood her, it was like she was mothering these eyes, this bus driver, throughout the trip. And I understood immediately at that point why she had been mothering this canister in such a way. It was because there were eyes. And it bothered me that the eyes kept flinging themselves onto the floor. Because, it wasn't secured very well. I imagine that the container was able to take a little bit of a beating, but I hope the eyes made it to where they needed to be in good shape, because that was not okay. She did manage to kind of hold them down, and then what I mean is secure them down a little bit better, but still not enough. So as we went from stop to stop, station to station, and there were times where the bus had to stop or slow pretty abruptly, the eyes went flying again. So but every time she would religiously and meticulously there was a point where it was just a stretch of Trans Canada and the eyes fell down, and we're just driving and the eyes just fell down because I think of how the bus turned or something, because there were curves. And she just, as soon as she's able to get into a stretch of straight road and she's like not going to disturb traffic behind her, which there wasn't any, she just gently pulls over like to the side on the shoulder, puts on the blinkers, goes to the bus and puts the eyes back in the seat. I think she put them back in the bin as well too, which was not much of a help because they kept flinging themselves out of the bin anyway. And then she would go back to the bus, take off the hazards, back into drive, and pull back onto the highway. And this happened at least like until we got to the halfway mark, which was in not Madoc. Damn, where's the halfway mark on that trip? Oh darn, I'm not remembering anymore where the halfway mark is. I used to know. It's not Kingston. It's before that. It's not Belleville. Napanee. When we got to Napanee, or like near Napanee, that's the halfway mark, I think, for that particular route. And when we got to Napanee, I want to say when we got to Napanee. From leaving Peterborough until Napanee, this driver, every time the eyes would fling themselves down off the bus seat, she'd pull over to the side of the highway on the shoulder and readjust the eyes, put them back in their seat, and, you know, make sure they're straight, and then sit back down. Like she was basically attending to a floppy baby that couldn't hold itself up. That was kind of how she was dealing with it. And so we go through this all the way to Napanee, and I'm like, I thought I was going to sleep. I'm not sleeping anymore. My eyes are peeled open because there are eyes in the front seat. And I was thinking of like, because I'm superstitious. I believe in ghouls and goblins. I believe in spooks and spirits. And I was like, I hope we're not haunted. And then we get to Napanee. And I learned very quickly we are in fact haunted. Not anymore. But on that night I was haunted. Attention all passengers, we interrupt this story to give you a special announcement. Literacy is at an all-time low these days for reasons mainly outside of our control, so I thought what better way to help and do my part than with the word of the week. This word of the week comes from a listener named Sean, my friend Sean, who decided he wanted me to do the word of the week, qualia. And I really do like this word. It's got a nice qualia to it. So it's got a nice quality to it. Qualia is, I'm going to use the definition from Oxford Languages, even though he gave me the page from Stanford because I can't decipher how to make a clear definition from Stanford. But if you want to read more, please go read the Stanford page. Oxford Languages Dictionary defines qualia as the internal and subjective component of sense perceptions arising from the stimulation of the senses by phenomena. Basically what that means is like, we all know what taste and touch and sight and smell and whatever are, but like the internal subjective part that is what we personally understand it to be, that's qualia. So everyone sees the same color, red. Here's an example sentence. Everyone sees the same colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, but not entirely, because the qualia of sight allows for variations in our experiences. Qualia. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Spooky. Okay. So we get to Napanee. And one of the things that Greyhound does is they switch out drivers at the halfway mark. Not always, but the night routes, they would switch out drivers at the halfway mark. Arguably because I don't think anybody wants to drive the entire way, all the way to Ottawa. If they're living in the Toronto area of things, like no one wants to go all the way to Ottawa, and then come all the way back. Like that's just not efficient. So usually at the halfway mark, the drivers will switch off with one another. So at the halfway mark, the bus that's going from Ottawa to Toronto is there also. Like they kind of coordinate both these buses stopping in the rest stop at the same time. I think it's Napanee. I really do think it's Napanee. I could be dead wrong, but it was in the middle. And it certainly wasn't in Madoc. And so we get to the stop and the drivers are going to switch. And it goes from being this lady who's been driving us to this other lady who was driving the bus from Ottawa into the direction of Toronto. So they switch, meaning our driver is going to take her bus and go back towards Toronto, and their driver is going to take our bus and take us the rest of the way to Ottawa. So they have a little conversation outside. And then the new driver gets on the bus, and it's a 15-minute rest stop or 20-minute, whatever it is. So people load back onto the bus after they're done going to the Tim Hortons to get coffee and pee. And I myself went and got something, I think, and came back on the bus and saw there was a new driver. Saw the eyes just sitting there in their little canister. I'm like, this is cool, great, wonderful. And then we all load on the bus, and the bus drives off, and we're going onto the highway. There was a point of loading the bus onto the highway, like driving the bus onto the highway, where you have to stop suddenly and wait to merge with traffic. And so she pulls up to this and just stops the bus. Doom. And the moment she does that, the canister, and it was on the ground. The eyes are on the ground again. Keep in mind the canister is locked and closed. Like the eyes are not spilling out. That would be a tragedy. Like that would be horror for real. The canister's on the ground again. And this driver was like, she had zero patience for this canister going ka-tunk, 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 ka-tunk. So this happened once. She got up. Like she got onto the highway, whatever. She pulled to the side of the road. No, did she? Hold on. She pulled onto the highway. No, I remember what happened. She pulled into the highway and she kept driving. I think she thought that one of the passengers' things fell down, like my phone or whatever. But as she was driving, the eye canister was rolling back and forth, hitting the end of each seat, because the seats have like a footrest thing that sits down, so it wouldn't have rolled under the seats and gone because of how high up the canister was, like the diameter. So instead, this canister is rolling back and forth as she slows and speeds the bus up and down as going on the highway, and the canister is hitting like in front, in the back, over and over again. And like this was arguably worse than the canister flinging itself off of the seat every so often, because now they're just rolling around on the floor, the eyes in the canister rolling around on the floor. And listen, I would have been pissed if I were the eyes, and I think the eyes were in fact pissed because I think she started having trouble with the bus. Here's what happened. She pulled the bus to the side of the road. She got up, like she put the blinkers on, whatever. She got up to find out what the hell this thing rolling around behind her is. She finds out it's the canister I assume the other driver had told her about. She looks at it. She picks it up with like the most dismissive, like I could not be bothered about this thing. Looks at it, reads it, sees the label for organ donor. This is at eyeballs. And then picks it up, sits it in the bin, shuffles it around to see if like it sits, puts it to sit like on its curve so that it'll roll, and then she gets to sit back in the seat and she starts to drive. But now as she's driving again, the canisters are rolling forward and backward and in its bin, as she's accelerating or decelerating the bus as needed. And I don't understand how that pissed her off so much. She saw was a set of eyes, like she read the label, had a visible reaction to the label. I think at one point she asked me, like, was this like anywhere else? Or was it in the seat? And I'm like, yeah, like the other driver had it there in the seat. And she's like, oh, all right. She put it back in the bin. Like that was when she was first adjusting it. She gets up, like she pulls over to the side of the highway again. Not like 2 minutes later, I guess completely irate with this constant rolling, gets up, comes over to the canister, picks up the canister and just she didn't toss it, like she didn't punt it, but she kind of just like with a little bit of a fling of the wrist because it was a little taller than her, just kind of like poof, up into overhead luggage. So now the eyes are in overhead luggage. Listen, I'm just saying that the bus driver who brought us from Toronto to Napanee, she must drive a lot of night buses. She must see a lot of shit. Because she was smart enough to put that canister to sit in its own seat with a seatbelt. The driver who was driving us now from Napanee to Ottawa, I don't know how much night driving she did. But she ain't ever met a set of eyes before. And I don't think she's ever going to make that mistake ever again because she put the canister of eyes up in overhead luggage to sit up straight. She got into the driver's seat, turned off the hazards, started to drive. She drove peacefully for a while. And there, to her credit, there was no more rolling, no more katak, 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 no more nothing. It's quiet, nice, peaceful bus. I was like, oh my God, bliss. But I was like a little mortified. Like she put them up there and the first reaction I had was like, should they be up there? The other driver had them in the seat. Clearly she knew what she was doing. Why would you put the eyes in overhead luggage? Aren't they going to get damaged? Like that's what I was thinking. Aren't they going to get damaged or something? Like, is that the right place for them? And we drove. We drove for, I would argue we drove for almost 15 minutes. Uneventfully. Until the bus had to stop. Like she had to hit the brakes pretty steeply. And I believe she was avoiding an animal that had run out into traffic or something. She managed to, like she kind of just moved the bus through the lanes and it was fine. Like an animal or something was at the side of the road. And so she had to move the bus. I kid you not, like 2 minutes later. So the way that it was inside of Greyhound buses, it wasn't dark. By nature, Greyhound buses are not dark inside. There's a little small set of lights, not the reading lights, but there are a small set of like electric, really, really tiny little lights that are just kind of like the seat lights, the lights that are on the aisleway so that you can see where you're going, all of that kind of stuff. There's those lights. Well, 2 minutes later after this incident, all of the bus's lights go out. The bus is still driving, but all of the bus's internal electric lights go out. All of them. The only lights that are left on are the headlights. That's it. Every single light, and I mean like all of the aisle lights are out. All of the little tiny seat lights are out. All of the little like illuminated button lights are out. People had reading lights on in other parts of the bus that they were putting on, like they were reading or looking at stuff. All those lights went out. Like all of the internal electric lights of this bus, dead, done. Just the headlights. And we're just driving. And this happens and she, I guess, doesn't notice or doesn't care. And she's like just driving. She has the most straightest, like dead, unemotional, like emotionless face ever. She had it when she caught on the bus. I think she had it as soon as she talked to the other bus driver because maybe the other bus driver told her you're going to be transporting eyes. And she was like, I'm having none of that. What the fuck do you mean? She was having none of that. And yet, because she was having none of that, I'd like to think, the guest in overhead luggage was very upset about being put in overhead luggage, and now the lights were gone. So we kept driving like this, and I immediately, I've watched Markiplier and Jacksepticeye and PewDiePie and Cry and Minx and Omewrecker play all the fucking horror games all my life. I grew up watching YouTube horror games. And I immediately was like, oh, I'm in one. This is how it starts. You disrespect the eyeballs. You put the eyeballs in overhead luggage, and now we don't have lights anymore. Why did you do that? We had an uneventful trip, the first half of the trip, and now we have to have angry eyeballs at us. Great, cool. We drive for maybe 10 more minutes. And then the bus's headlights go out. Just gone. And as soon as this happens, she puts on the high beam lights and slows the bus down and pulls to the side of the road, and then turns the high beams off, and then turns the bus off, and then turns the bus back on, and the lights come back on. Like, all the regular headlights come back on. She's like, okay. Great, cool. So she keeps driving the bus a bit more. Well, the headlights go out again. Not like I'm not even kidding you. She gets maybe like a kilometer down the highway before the lights are gone again. So she pulls over to the side. Like, she does the same thing. High beams, pulls over to the side of the road, and some of the fog lights are working, I think. And then stops the bus, turns the bus off, turns it back on. Lights are on. She's like, okay. But I could see her like reeling a little bit, like, what the fuck is happening? And this is literally like, you could cause and affect this as a consequence of her putting the eyes in overhead luggage. So I could see the wheels turning in her head too, like, okay, what the hell? And then she starts driving again. Clearly she didn't get the message, because as she was driving, the headlights went out. We had only fog lights. So clearly the eyes were not intent on killing everyone. We had just the fog lights left. And the bus started to like sputter and slow down and like and like the bus had no more acceleration to pick up, and so she starts pulling off the highway onto the shoulder, like, hey, the bus is not fucking driving, and pulls the bus to a stop, parks, turns it off, turns it back on. It didn't. It would. Okay, she turns it back off. Turns it. Okay, turns it off. Turns it back. And then it starts. And she's like, "Okay, great, cool. What the hell?" And then she keeps going. And driving the bus. We get maybe another 15 minutes, 20 minutes smoothly down the road before the bus just dies. Like, it just, and I kid you not, like dead. Like, the bus wheels are still turning, but the bus lights have gone out and the ignition is gone. Like, gone. And I think she immediately starts pushing the brakes and puts the hazards on, and which were apparently still working, and pulls the bus to the side of the road by the light of the hazard lights. And I'm like, oh, I'm dying tonight for this woman's stupidity. So she pulls the bus to the side of the road, manages to stop it, turns the bus off, turns it on. Nothing. Like, that's it. That's the whole sound that the bus made. Okay, well, she's like, I don't know what the hell is going on. So she seems like she calls in something on a radio. Because buses have radios. And then she gets up and she kind of like goes out. She goes outside the bus and lifts the hood of the bus, and she's like looking into what's going on in the freaking bus. And she's not able to get whatever needs to work. So she's doing it. She comes back into the bus, tries to start the bus again. And I kid you not, we were on this highway for 20 minutes. Just stopped. Like, dead stopped. Completely. Could not get it to work. Another, like, whoever she called on radio managed to come down to us in that 20 minutes time. I think they may have just raced a little bit. Like, it took a while. We were stuck there for a while. And then they, like, I guess they were from the Greyhound, whatever. They were from, I don't know, maybe she called the Toad people. Who she called, I don't know. But she called someone, and they were there, and they were looking at the bus and like trying to figure it out with her. No dice. Nothing at all. And I think I heard discussion of like, it's fine, we'll get another bus to come pick up the passengers or whatever it was, because we're like, now we're stranded out on the other end of the road. And he left. Or no, he stood there, but he was calling something. And she comes on board and she tries to restart the bus a few times more. And then it's like she has this epiphany and she understands. And she very tentatively, hesitantly gets up out of her seat, goes over to the front 2 seats that had the bin and whatever, looks up in overhead luggage at the eyes, reaches up, pulls the eyes out of overhead luggage. She the way she did it and touched it was so much more reverently now, like she was afraid. She took the eyes down, put them back in the bin, secured the seatbelt, put something to keep the eyes from rolling around, or from flying forward, put them to lie flat, like on the cylinder's side, and sat down in front of the bus. Looked at the driver's seat. She looked at the guy still dialing, and after maybe 30 seconds, it's like she didn't want to test her theory, but she knew she had to. After 30 seconds, she turns the key to the ignition. The bus starts. Everything. The whole bus starts. It's like nothing happened. The whole bus starts and roars to life. And she's like, okay. She gets up. She goes down, tells the guy, you know what? Not a damn thing wrong. I don't know what's going on. But I mean, like, we can do some tests. So they seem like they did some sort of testing of this and that to see if stuff was running. And like, yeah, the bus is A-okay. And so we get in and they conclude it's fine. We'll drive the bus. It's fine. So we drive the goddamn bus. The guy leaves, or she leaves him by the side of the road or whatever. And he's going to go deal with his bullshit. And she drives the bus. That can rolled back and forth in that bin all night long. All of the internal, like, she drove, I'm kidding, I'm not even kidding you. So the bus roared back to life with its headlights and everything. The internal lights still weren't on. She drove, at least 5, 7, 10 minutes. And all of the internal lights came back on. Every single one, including the reading lights that were left on and everything. Some people have fallen asleep and were like, oh, I've been blinded by the light. All of that. And then we drove to Ottawa with this eyes rolling back and forth in the bin. She and I had made eye contact at one point when she threw them up into overhead luggage. And she saw me look at her with this like, what the hell? Like, I don't think you should do that kind of look. So when she pulled it out, she did not meet my eyes. To bring it back out of overhead luggage and put it into the bin. And we go all the way to Ottawa with not a single problem. Like, I'm telling you, the problem started the moment she put the thing up in overhead luggage, and immediately all the problems evaporated the moment she put it back in its seat. We got all the way to Ottawa with not a single problem. And then we're all loading off the bus, and I'm one of the first people off the bus. And as I'm coming off the bus, she looks at me and I look at her, and she kind of looks at me with like, it's like this look in her eyes of like admitting a truth that she didn't want to. She's looking at me like with this kind of look of like, you knew, huh? I guess you kind of knew. That's why you gave me that look. Like, she's understanding the look I gave her earlier. And so we load off the bus and we get to our places and I go home. I was bloody mortified. And I hope the eyes, I didn't even know what the hell we were doing transporting eyes. I didn't know why eyes would be transported. I was like, who's transplanting eyes? They don't do that. And years later, like I'm talking about a few months ago, I put 2 and 2 together, that corneal transplants are a thing. I knew this for many years, but I never put 2 and 2 together that's why those eyes were donated as like organs donated for a transplant. That makes a whole lot more sense. So yeah, that's the guest in overhead luggage. I told you it wasn't that bad of a story. It was a little spooky, but like not that spooky. I have so many more spooky ghosty stories. I might drop a few more. I think I'm going to drop a few more in other episodes. But yeah, starting off with a good solid spooker. So yeah, moral of the story, You gotta respect ghouls and goblins. I have a friend of mine, Tyson, who I've mentioned before, who famously said to me, "I don't fuck with ghouls and goblins." And yeah, I think that's pretty much the play. I don't fuck with ghouls and goblins either. She tried to fuck with ghouls and goblins, that driver, and she missed terribly. So yeah. That's all for this episode. Welcome back to season 2. I'm glad to have you. I'm glad you're sticking around for more. Thank you so much for being here, for putting up with the giant episode that I dropped last time, and for my weirdly inconsistent schedule. Please do join me on Wednesday. I actually have the episode. It's going up. I promise you. But yeah, if you want to follow the podcast online on Instagram and TikTok, you can at Retrospect Station. If you want to follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you can follow me at AstroAlex34. And if you feel like donating to the podcast to help me, because it's literally all that I do, and I'm still working on getting a subscriber base for me to get ad revenue money, you can visit ko-fi.com/Retrospect Station. I would appreciate it much. But yeah, that's all for this episode. I will see you next week. Toodles!
A special thanks to the Mississauga Library Makerspace and Hazel McCallion Library. Without their resources, this show would not be possible.